Hello everybody and welcome to your lighting critique. This is my last critique of 2023. After this week, Jasmine's going to be taking over the critiquing. So before I kick anything off, I just wanted to say thank you all for being amazing. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be able to look at your stuff and provide feedback and work with all of you. So I'm so grateful for all of you. I'll still be active in the community, obviously, but this is the last video that I'll record. So I would just want to say I hope everyone has a very happy holiday. And I will see you again for some more critiquing into 2023. 24, my goodness, we're in the future. Okay, so let's hop into this. So first off, we had a question here about this shot, and the questions were basically just, one of the feedback I gave in the last round was that there were a couple moments where the teeth and the eyes start to feel a little bit glowy. It's honestly more about the teeth than anything else. It's mostly when, there's a couple moments here, like mostly at the end of the shot, and I was reacting to it here. Like, do you see how this character's teeth start to glow out to the point where you're no longer getting definition and seeing the individual components between them? So that's where it's starting to really kind of get too bright for me, especially because the light source is coming in from this way, right? Like, there's no light coming in from this side. So, and it's almost like the teeth are getting inversely shaped that way. So what you would expect is that as the character's facing away from the light, now, the teeth would get a little bit darker. Now, I don't want them to get dark. I don't want them to be like, this is our hero character. I don't want it to feel like a villain type of a look, but just something to be aware of there. While we're in here, a couple other things too that I just noticed was one of them was I love the material on the shirt. I think you did a really good job with that. There's a strange gradient happening down the arm here. And I just want to draw attention to it. If it's by design, that's totally fine. If that's what you wanted, great. But if not, it just feels a little bit like, I understand there would be color variation in the shirt. I would just expect to see it around the seams, like around the shoulder seam or maybe around the neckline or something. To have a discoloration just around the lower part of the arm feels more like a mistake and less than a design idea. So just wanted to draw attention to that. And then I thought for bonus points too, with this light kind of shining in behind the succulent plant here, it would almost get a little bit of warm glow around the edges of it. I have a lot of succulents since I moved to California, and they tend to get a little bit of like a fuzzy, warmy glow around the edges. But everything else is looking really nice. I love the wear and tear of the boxes. A little bit of pixelation or something on the edge of this. I guess that would be duct tape around there, but just something to be aware of. And then, and I mentioned this too in the critique, but yeah, I would give it a shot changing the pant color to something darker, just because we get a little, like, for two reasons. One, you get a little lost in there when it comes to the read between the pants and the box and that kind of thing. Also, it's like the pants are brighter than anything else, and my eye keeps kind of drawn down there, and the darker sofa and everything. So what I think is, if by creating like a dark blue material, it'll just kind of allow them to be different while still blending in with the value, and allowing our focus to stay up by the characters' faces. That's all. Good stuff. All right, cool. So next up, we got this one. The question on this one was, trying to separate out, because what we wanted from the reference is, from the Blade Runner reference, is an idea of structuring the shot from light to dark going back to forward. So we've got a lightness value of like 1 back here, that's the brightest. The characters get hit with midtones 2, and then we get some darkness here in the foreground 3. And the characters in the middle are being rear lit, so the majority of their lighting kind of comes this mysterious kind of rim light around them. So you've got a lot of that going on. You mentioned that there's just a lot of, it's still pretty lifted here in the foreground. You did a light blocker, all that good stuff. Here's my suggestion for you. And that's all totally normal things that are difficult to kind of balance out. It's easier if you break them into render layers, especially anytime you do a volumetric light. Always break that into a separate render layer, because you're going to run into situations like this where the value of that fog shining through is going to lift the value here, and you're just kind of stuck with that. Because once the value is lifted, obviously you can go in and you can comp it down and kind of crush those values back a little bit, but like once that is added to the final image, there's no making it darker. Lighting is an additive process, and adding more light just makes more light. So that would be my first thing. So I would do it I would actually do a couple of different lighting passes at this. Number one would be just the light that's kind of illuminating them as the rim, and into the room, whatever that is. Because then you can control that separately. Then you can be like, okay, cool, that's hitting here, it's not hitting here, it's not hitting the foreground, it's hitting them as a rim, awesome. And then I would render out the fill light, because it looks like there's some sort of fill in here separately, so you can control the fill value across the room. And then the third step is the volumetric light, because you want it to be denser around the source and kind of fall off as you go away. And you can kind of control that a little bit better, because naturally that'll happen in the render, and then you can take the levels or the curve inside of like a Photoshop or something and adjust that out from there. So that's how I would control that. I do like, because one thing about the reference, we'll just go and pull it back up, is, sorry, I lost Discord here. Here we go. All right, let me go up to your reference. So the reference, again, was from Blade Runner. And the one thing I like about this is, again, we've got that structure here. Lighter back there, mid-tone, and then darker in the foreground, although there aren't that many objects there to catch it. Now, the one thing I like about it is, there's a separation between these characters in the story, right? They're at opposing ends. And we've got this, like, kind of green screen element right in the middle separating them. And I think you kind of have that here, but it's being muddied by this volumetric light. So I like the idea of, like, again, toning that down, isolating it closer to the light. It's okay if it fills in a little bit of this, but then using this kind of green light, maybe spilling that on the floor here to kind of cause a separation between the two characters in the story. That's something that I generally like to do. Kind of definitely makes them feel at different ends of the spectrum. All right, cool. I hope that helps. All right, great. And just wanted to, I haven't done an approval shot in a while, so this is a really great job. This is looking absolutely beautiful. It's been added to the Hall of Fame. Congratulations. This looks great. Very, very well done. I'm excited to see the projects you make in the future. Okay, now we are on to Dylan. Dylan, this one made me laugh, man. This was really funny. So I just liked, because this is a very serious, kind of dark, gritty movie, and to bring them all out into simple shapes is very funny. Your question about up here, whether the light is a different color versus the material. So these materials are pretty low saturation. So I think it is actually the light color in there. So I would push the light color a little bit warmer up in there. And the reason why is they do a really good job of, even in the original structure, centering everything around the middle here so that the blue engulfs the characters. And so that's all tied in here. And then the warm light back behind is just kind of a separating element. I should use this as an example whenever I'm telling people whenever they're engaging with a screen or a flame or anything like that, you need that light on the character. You need to connect those two components together. You need them to interact, not only by touching and animating, but through the lighting as well. And you've got that here. I think yours might be a little bit on the saturated side, but other than that, it's really good. I'm not going to critique this too much, because I think you've clearly done a lot of work, and your eye is definitely in the right spot. But just kind of finishing that off, and I think that you're heading down the exact right path. So really good job with that. Yes. Okay. So forum, you asked about adding the diffusion. I do have a YouTube video on that on my YouTube channel. You can check that out. If you just go to Michael Tanzillo, it's under the diffusion. I'm sorry, I can if you can't find it, let me know and I can share the link with you. I meant to. I probably should have just pulled that up here. But anyway, all right. So all I did so far, where are my layers? There. So all I did so far was I just created a new layer on top of this. So the question was, if I haven't said this yet, how do you add some diffusion? So I did this in my last mock-up. So for this, what I'm doing here is I added a second layer on top of this. I went ahead and I'm just going to add a little bit of Gaussian blur to that one. 8 pixels is perfectly fine. And what I would do is I actually want to take this blurry image, and I really wanted to kind of highlight the warms in the center. So I just went ahead and kind of push up a little bit of red and a little bit of yellow, right? And then what I can do with this blurry version of this image is, instead of layering it on normal, which just looks like a blurry thing, I can add this back in. So and usually when I bring in a diffuse pass, I do it one of two ways. There's add, which literally just adds the pixels. It's an additive process. The positive of that is that if you're working at a film studio, and they usually work in a linear pipeline that allows you to go over values over one, that is a really positive thing. Now, if you're just working for an online school and you want to just create some images that are only going to be seen on the web, you're not going to have that linear expression. So what I like to do there is to do it as a screen, because you can see the difference. They're both adding the element in. It's just that screen will kind of round it off near the top of the curve, so you're not going to get too many overblown whites. Now, all that being said, this is way too heavy-handed. So what I do is as I tone this down, and I kind of bring this back into the middle here, and just add a little bit of diffusion there. And then what I do is you really kind of want to isolate it to the brighter parts of the image, because you don't want to lift the dark values in here. So what I'm just going to do is just kind of start deleting it. And again, this is, you could definitely mask it and do a better job of that than just deleting it, but just for the purposes of this, I just do that. And now what you can do is you can kind of layer that in. And again, if you're like, okay, this is looking, I like this, but I actually want to bring in even more warmth. Now that you've kind of got that, you bring in more of a warm color and then dial this back up or something along those lines. And so now you've got this kind of like warmy glow in the center of the image to really embrace, because again, there's snow on the ground, there might be some, little bit some moisture in the air, just to kind of pick that up a little bit. So I hope that helps. And again, if you can't find that YouTube video, let me know. All right, next up, I think this is looking good. I think that the only thing is like the screenshot of the nuke file and not actually rendering it out. Like questions about there's kind of aliased edges and things like that. So just making sure that those are all cool would be my only big note. And then the other one that I was thinking of, because we're kind of, the amount of light that's coming in from the outside is teetering on being an actual light source versus being the moon, right? So like, I'm wondering about the value of the sky outside of this. This almost feels like there should be something out here that indicates that there's a light source, like the moon, causing that much light, and I'm not quite sure what that would be. Like maybe actually seeing the moon or something. But point being, I think that it makes much more sense to me that the sky outside of here is this bright, not so much back there. It almost feels like now that this level of brightness in the sky kind of surrounding almost feels like there's a helicopter or something directly over top of this that's causing that. So what I would suggest is, this is going to look bad, but like just kind of darkening that area outside the window, because I think it's just a little bit too bright back there. Again, super janky, but just thinking like structurally. If you kind of darken that down here, it would leave more space for the attention to be here and here, right? And a little bit less on that back side. It's a little bit opaque. But I think it's looking great otherwise. The lens flare is looking good. Wait, is there? Let me just check something here real quick. I guess I would soften the edge of the lens flare. There's a couple points where I'm getting my eyes getting tripped up looking across, like over here, that I forget it's a lens flare, and it just looks like there's lines going along the image. So I'm cool with it being tight right in here, but then allow it to kind of fade off, like soften the edge just a little bit more as it goes away. Yeah, but all in all, the structure of this is really great. Really nice job. All right, let me go back into because you had some questions. All right. Okay. Thanks, Michael. For the key light, I'm using a sky dome, having difficulty softening the shadows. Is it okay if I don't use an HDRI image? My question is, how do I use the HDRI image for an indoor scene? I actually tweaked the specularity on both the skin and plant, but no luck. I will share with you the specular map. Okay, cool. And how can I add warm bounce? Great questions. All right, let's look at this. Okay, so in terms of the specular map, yeah, there's just not enough specularity in the materials. Like it's just, it feels very diffuse and very flat. There should be a roughness setting or a roughness map on those plants. If you're using the PBR system, if you're using diffuse and specular, it would be in the specularity levels. I would just take down the roughness. I'm just going to try and write out roughness. That's not going to work. And then try and get it that way. But yeah, it's at this point it's more of a material tweak than a lighting tweak, because you can see like really nice specular highlights in the arm. Man, those look good, and these down here too, and on her. So it's not the lighting's fault. The lighting is there. It's just on the plant. Now, one thing I will point out is how different the specularity looks between the two characters. Like hers feels very cool and almost metallic, where his feels nice and warm. I like his values a little better. For the sky dome light, it's like HDRI images are totally dependent, reliant on the images that are inputted into them to generate the shadows. So yeah, totally. You can either just take that HDRI image and blur it, that'll soften it, or just use a soften value too. Now, for interior scenes, what I like to do is, because a sky dome is everywhere, and it's just going to be shining light at the walls on the outside, and like you're just going to lose a lot of samples in there. Is if you're using Arnold, I believe they're called light portals. So you make a sky dome light, and then you make a light portal, and that usually gives you like an area light looking thing that you can place outside the window and just shine it directly in that way. And that kind of like condenses all of the samples from the environment light into one smaller area and allow you to kind of focus it in there. So and then the other option would be, instead of using a sky dome at all, you can just use an area light or outside that window to kind of bring that in. I think there was one more question. Sorry, let me go back to this again. Okay, so yeah, it's totally fine if you just want to use a color or a ramp or something instead of an HDRI image. Yeah, no problem there. So how can I add warm bounce? Oh, to add warm bounce, that was the other one. For me, I just add area lights on the ground that just shine up. Like, so if you want more warm bounce light on this wall back here, just bury an area light down here. That's a terrible drawing, but it would be more like down here, behind the couch, and then just bounce some of that up. Or you can do it in front of the couch to kind of get back up on the characters. But yeah, it's much more about adding a light source down there to do that. All right, great. Well, happy holidays again, everyone. It's been a pleasure working with you, as it has been for the last, we've been doing this for 11, 12 years now. And so, yeah, looking forward to seeing what you do. But in the meantime, happy holidays, happy lighting, and I will talk to you all soon.